You can feel it the moment you walk a marina that actually fishes. Not the showroom marina, not the one with the floating tiki bar and the boats that move twice a season. The working marina. The one where the dock lines are frayed from use and the fish blood never fully washes off the transom. Walk that marina and count engines. Count what serious offshore captains are actually buying when they spend their own money, rig for their own conditions, and go looking for fish in water that wants to kill them. The inboards are disappearing, not from the brochures. The brochures still look great, but from the slips, from the tournament docks, from the center consoles that are running 40 miles offshore before the sun clears the horizon. The captains who fish hardest, who put the most hours on their boats, who have owned both and run both, and written the checks for both. They are rigging outboards, Yamaha outboards, quad-rigged, trim-up, fish anywhere, fix-it-yourself outboard engines. And the Volvo Penta IPS pod drive, which the marine industry spent a decade telling you was the future of offshore propulsion, is watching that happen from the slip next door. This is not a preference story. This is not about what looks cool at the boat show. This is about what works when the fishing is real, the water is rough, and the math runs out to 5 years of ownership costs, spread across a hull you paid $800,000 for. The outboard is winning. Here is exactly why. The first thing you need to understand is what a Volvo Penta IPS pod drive actually costs you before you ever turn a wrench. The pod system is an engineering achievement. Fixed underwater pods housing contra-rotating forward-facing propellers, integrated joystick docking, the whole package. On calm water in a marina, it is genuinely impressive. The joystick control is smooth. The docking precision is real. Volvo earned that reputation honestly, and for a certain kind of boater, that system made sense. But offshore fishing is not docking in a marina. Offshore fishing is running a 39-foot center console across open water to a wreck sitting in 80 feet of water, then backing down on a billfish at full throttle, then creeping up on a tide rip with the engines trimmed to hold position over structure. And that last part, trimmed to hold position, is exactly where the Yamaha F300 starts separating itself from everything Volvo Penta built its reputation on. When you trim 4 Yamaha outboards up on approach to a shallow piece of structure, the propellers clear the water completely. You drift in silent. Nothing below the waterline except your hull. You are floating over a reef that would destroy a pod drive, and you do not have to think about it for 1 second. The IPS pods are fixed geometry. They hang below the hull at a set depth, always. Back over a crab pot warp in the dark, drag across a sandbar on a falling tide, anchor up over a rocky bottom with surge pushing the stern. The pods are down there taking every bit of it. You paid $80,000 for that underwater hardware. Every bottom you touch is a reminder. The weight difference compounds that vulnerability. A center console rigged with quad Yamahas runs roughly 1,500 to 2,500 pounds, lighter than a comparable inboard-powered hull in the same length class, a difference that translates directly into draft, speed, and access. 18 inches of draft is the difference between clearing an inlet bar on a falling tide and calling sea tow. The Yamaha boat clears it. The IPS boat anchors and waits for the tide. That is not a minor inconvenience. That is the difference between fishing and not fishing. On a 39-foot center console rigged with quad F300s, there is no engine room, no transmission tunnel cutting through your fishable cockpit, no shaft alley eating the bilge space where your kill bags and tackle need to live. The entire deck from the console aft is working space. Coolers where you need them, rod holders where they make sense, room to fight a fish without tripping over a hatch cover. The Volvo Penta Sportfish of equivalent length dedicates 40 to 60 square feet of interior volume to mechanical infrastructure the Yamaha boat simply does not carry. That space is gone before you even leave the dock. If you run offshore and you want to understand the decisions that actually move the needle, not the boat show narrative, but the engineering and economics that serious captains have already figured out, subscribe. This is what this channel covers every week, and the next video is going to change how you evaluate every new build you look at. Now let's talk about what happens when something breaks, because something always breaks. The question is what it costs you and how long you sit. A lower unit strike on a Yamaha F300 is a bad day. It is not a life-altering financial event. Replacement cost installed runs roughly $4,000 to $6,000, and any certified marine mechanic with access to Yamaha's diagnostic system can handle the work. Yamaha's diagnostic interface, the Yamaha Diagnostic System, or YDS, is available to independent certified technicians through a licensing program that does not require dealer exclusivity. Your local independent shop, the one that has been keeping boats running in your county for 20 years, can plug in, pull codes, and get you back on the water. A pod strike on a Volvo Penta IPS system is not a bad day. It is a conversation with your insurance company, an argument with a yard, and 6 weeks of your life you are not getting back. Pod replacement, when a pod takes a hard bottom strike, runs $40,000 to $60,000 per pod, installed before you account for any associated hull repair. And here is the part that compounds the damage. Volvo Penta IPS diagnostics run through Volvo's proprietary Vodia software. Fault codes, pod actuator diagnostics, joystick docking system calibration, none of it is accessible without Vodia and a Volvo certified technician holding the key. The independent mechanic who could fix almost anything else on your boat is standing in front of your engine looking at a screen he is not allowed to read. A captain running charters out of a small coastal marina in a rural county 3 hours from the nearest Volvo Penta dealer knows exactly what that means. His IPS system throws a joystick docking fault the Friday afternoon before a tournament he has been preparing for all season. The code is locked behind software his local mechanic cannot access. The certified dealer cannot dispatch a technician until Tuesday. He misses the tournament. Entry fees, potential winnings, and a year of preparation gone. When the tech finally arrives Tuesday morning, the fault clears in 20 minutes. A sensor calibration. His local mechanic could have handled it in an hour. Volvo Penta decided that was not his mechanic's call to make. Run the 5-year ownership math on an actively fished offshore boat. 150 hours per year. Genuine blue water use. One moderate bottom strike in that window. Normal wear on impellers and zincs and anodes. Outboard total maintenance on a quad rig center console across 5 years runs roughly $18,000 to $28,000 depending on configuration. The IPS equivalent, factoring in one pod strike and standard dealer-only service intervals, runs $60,000 to $90,000 over the same period. The boat that costs $30,000 more to buy in outboard configuration frequently costs $20,000 less to own. The math is not close. The FTC's 2021 report on repair restrictions explicitly flagged marine equipment as a category where manufacturer lockout was creating measurable consumer harm. Florida, North Carolina, and Maine have all seen right-to-repair legislation introduced that would cover marine propulsion systems. The pressure is building in exactly the markets where serious offshore fishing happens, and it is building because captains are being stranded by software that treats them like subscription customers rather than boat owners. The market has already registered its verdict. In the 30 to 45-foot offshore segment, the core serious fishing market, center consoles now represent the majority of new wholesales across Florida, the Carolinas, and the Gulf states. Yellowfin, Contender, Everglades, Regulator. Every major center console builder has expanded its offshore line because outboard demand in that segment is outrunning the inboard-powered alternatives faster than the builders can keep up. Tournament circuits from the Bahamas to the mid-Atlantic canyons have watched center console participation grow from a niche entry to a plurality of the fleet. The captains switching are not first-time boat buyers who stumbled into a Yamaha because it was cheaper. These are experienced offshore fishermen with decades of time on the water who ran the total cost of ownership numbers and stopped buying the inboard story. The Volvo Penta IPS platform still holds real ground in one place: the long-range passage-making sportfish market. A 50-plus foot convertible running to offshore canyons for 5 consecutive days needs range, fuel capacity, and rough water stability that a center console cannot replicate at the same price point. Nobody is arguing that. The twin diesel express boat at that size and mission is not losing to Outboards yet, and that is a fair concession. But here is what that concession actually tells you. The segment the inboard platform still owns is the segment where the buyer has no practical alternative, where the mission and the price point make the architecture unavoidable regardless of preference. The moment a buyer has a genuine choice, the way a 32 to 45 foot offshore center console buyer does, they are choosing Yamaha Outboards at a rate that has restructured the new hull market. The inboard's last stronghold is the category where it wins by default. That is not market strength. That is managed retreat. This story has a parallel that anyone who watched the automotive industry in the 2000s will recognize immediately. Turbocharged 4-cylinder engines spent a decade being dismissed by the V8 faithful. Too complicated, too expensive to service when they fail, too far removed from what performance was supposed to feel like. Then the reliability data came in. Then the fuel economy data came in. Then the performance numbers came in, and they were not embarrassing. The V8 did not disappear. It retreated to the applications where displacement genuinely cannot be replaced. Everything else became Turbo 4 territory, and the buyers who swore they would never accept that engine are driving them today without thinking about it. Volvo Penta IPS is running the V8 arc. The hull builders who committed their molds and their deck layouts to inboard geometry cannot simply re-engineer their way out. A hull designed around pod drives cannot be re-rigged with outboards. The tooling, the weight distribution, the interior layout, all of it was locked in for a propulsion philosophy that the working market is walking away from. Dock by dock, tournament by tournament, service call by service call. And if you think the lockout problem stops at the engine, wait until you see what is happening to marine electronics. Because the same software wall that is stranding IPS owners at the dock is now creeping into chart plotters, autopilots, and sonar systems. And the company leading the fight against it is not who you would expect. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.